So, welcome back to Everything Marketplaces, where we talk with founders and leaders from some of today's top marketplaces. So, this is episode 83, which is a really great group chat that we just had with Blake Hutchison, who's the CEO of Flippa. So, most of you are probably familiar with Flippa, but if not, it's the largest online marketplace for buying and selling online businesses with over 3 million registered users. They also recently raised their Series A round, which Blake shared more about with us. So this is a really great group chat with Blake, where we got to learn more about Flippa as a leading marketplace for buying and selling online businesses, how it's evolved, its recent growth, the recent funding round, and also had a great Q&A for those on the chat. So I really enjoyed this conversation, and I know you're going to find it a great watch to the end. So Blake, welcome to the group chat. It's definitely great to have you join us here today. So I've been following Flippa for a few years now, so I'm really excited to dive into it and learn more about it as a marketplace today. Before we jump into things, though, I think it'd be great if you can start off by sharing a little bit more on your background for those that don't know you.
Yeah, awesome, Mike. Thanks for having me, and congratulations on building an awesome community. It's super helpful for all of us, I think. So look, my background's super diverse and varied. I've worked across multiple industries and obviously in multiple roles. Almost always with a really, really strong commercial and growth orientation. I've worked across businesses in e-commerce, SaaS, publishing, advertising, and multiple diverse industries, from cloud accounting to travel, and even my own marketplace, which was a business I founded back in 2010, which ultimately became a specialty food marketplace, and had some limited success. But long story short, vast and varied roles, where I've managed strategic partnerships, product partner organizations, as well as an online travel business end to end, which grew to $300 million in GMV. So lots of vast and varied responsibility before eventually becoming the CEO here at Flippa about 3 years ago now.
Yeah, so that's really great. And thanks for sharing your background with us. What led you to becoming the CEO of Flippa? Because I've heard it's a kind of a unique and interesting story.
Yeah, I mean, I had sold, or at least attempted to sell, my own business, which was, again, a marketplace to buy and sell specialty food from specialty food producers and retailers, equivalent to, say, Good Eggs over there in the US, for those of you who are more familiar with that marketplace. And so I ran that business, and it took on multiple forms before it became a marketplace, actually, as they often do. Same with Flippa, which I'll talk about in a minute. And having attempted to sell my own business on Flippa, I was obviously a customer and therefore acutely aware of the challenges of being a business owner and ultimately finding a pathway to exit. So I was super interested in the business and had been for a long time. Serendipitously, the board and the founders were looking for a CEO to take, Flippa from what we were, which was a really good quality technology platform, but haven't really grown to the heights that they had imagined through the vision. And so the vision is to enable an exit and pathway to exit for every small business owner worldwide, as much as it is to empower business ownership. And so when we got chatting, one, I had a passion for small business. Two, I really loved marketplaces and loved the value that it offers humankind. You're essentially trying to sit in the middle and facilitate business between two parties. And I think that's really admirable. And I love the dynamics that happen in a marketplace to make that happen. So long story short, it was the experience of using the platform as a customer as much as it was empathizing with the user experience and what they were trying to achieve as a company, which drew me to it. I think it's unique that we were an organically grown, bootstrapped, profitable marketplace operating from Melbourne, Australia, with a global footprint. And that seemed like a sexy opportunity to me. You get the opportunity to lead a company which has grown almost 100% organically. And so took the reins 3 years ago and haven't looked back since that time. We're doing really well.
That's a really cool story. So you mentioned 3 years ago is when you joined.
That's right. So The founders do not work in the business day to day. They are board members, they're directors, they're obviously the most substantial shareholders on the cap table. They are very, very experienced marketplace entrepreneurs, and they've had really, really strong success. And Flippa was actually born out of a forum. And that forum was called SitePoint. SitePoint still operates today. You can check it out at sitepoint.com. It's a 20-year-old asset. And it's a community of engineers and developers learning how to code. And what they recognized was that community was really, really active in exchanging information and what turned out to be assets with each other. And so two marketplaces span out of SitePoint. Obviously, the one we're talking about today, Flippa, which I run, but the other one was 99 Designs. And 99 Designs was recently acquired by Vistaprint. So it's quite an interesting story around two great marketplaces being founded out of a community environment. I think lots of marketplaces do grow up that way, actually.
Yeah, that is definitely a really interesting story. Just for a little bit of context, when you came into Flippa, what sense of scale were you at?
So when I took over Flippa 3 years ago, we were bootstrapped, we were profitable, we were organically growing. We were picking up sort of between, I would say, 500 to 600 users a day. And so that's kind of your top of funnel metric from which we capture intent. They can then go on to register as a buyer or seller. And then, of course, we track them down to their next action, which could be a valuation for their business asset, or placing a bid or offer or starting a discussion, the various marketplace metrics which make sense to us. And we're now at sort of 1,000 to 1,250 new registrations per day, of which 70 to 80% of those are buyers. So that gives you some sense of the growth in I guess, users. The more interesting thing actually is the Flippa is a high value, low repeat marketplace. And so what's been interesting about the group of customers that have come to Flippa, probably more recently over the last 12 months, is what they're looking to do on the platform. And it's a more mature buying and selling sales cycle. So they're typically looking to sell a higher value asset, sort of creeping up above the $250,000 into $500,000 territory. Whereas historically, we were sort of looking at average order values of $25,000 to $50,000. So you're kind of looking at a 10 times increase in the size of the asset that's listing. And then similarly on the buy side, the buying demand and intent has matured substantially. I don't necessarily think that's just Flippa, by the way. That's the industry as a whole.
On that note too, who is Flippa for? Like, could you kind of walk us through on the buyer and seller side?
Startups, entrepreneurs, and investors. So let's talk about the sell side and buy side separately. On the sell side, you've essentially got two types of seller. You've got an established business owner that has scaled to a certain size, which is meaningful enough for a investor to buy. So you're kind of talking about businesses which are doing greater than $250,000 in annualized revenue. And of course, we operate across multiple business models. So it could be a SaaS business reporting on ARR, or it could be an e-com business reporting on annualized revenue. And so they are more accomplished business owners who have scaled on top of the platform economy. So Shopify, WordPress, Amazon, Google AdSense, any of the platforms which enable these business owners to thrive. Then you've got the more junior micro asset. So this is kind of the person who has a side hustle. So they're not a full-time entrepreneur. They're more a side hustle type operator. And they're operating smaller businesses, probably more likely doing between $10,000 and $100,000 annual revenue. And they are typically the bread and butter for Flippa. That's where the marketplace comes into its own. It's predominantly self-service. The technology stack has been built to enable them to operate end-to-end on the platform in a frictionless environment. On the buyer side, you've got three types of buyer. You've got the person who is looking to acquire a side hustle, and that's supplementary income. You've got the be your own boss generation, and that's the person who wants to own and operate and get a full-time income out of that operation. And then you've got investors and institutional. And the investors and institutional are no different to the way people have thought about buying and selling businesses for hundreds of years. It's there to grow. It's there to be a complement to a portfolio strategy. And they are not individuals, they are groups of people who come together to buy to grow. And so you can kind of think about them in the form of startups, entrepreneurs, and investors as a whole.
Got it. Yeah. Thanks for sharing with us on that. Have you seen like maybe one kind of segment of, either like supply or demand, increase more recently?
Yeah. So certainly there's feverish demand on the buy side. And so marketplaces will always have a challenge around which side of the market they need to focus on and prioritize, right? And so for us, our strategy is to match. So we're a matching business. And so we want to match high quality business owners with acquisition fit buyers. And so to answer your question, acquisition fit buyers has been really fast growing for us. But the question we've always had to solve is, how do you determine whether someone's acquisition fit? So they can demonstrate intent, but what you've actually got to figure out is whether that intent can materialize to a sale. And so whilst we've seen far more activity on the buy side, it still remains a core part of our strategy to try to understand that buy side a little better to inform our matching algorithms.
Yeah. And have you always matched or is that something that like you've just more recently started doing?
Matching's at the heart of the Flippa experience, and it has been since day one. So, you can match in two ways in a marketplace environment, and probably not that different to an e-commerce environment, actually, where you use a combination of both implicit and explicit preferences. And an explicit preference is obviously where the buyer tells you a little bit about what they want. And that's critical because you can match those fields with the same fields on the sell side, and matching's actually not that difficult. Implicit is a little harder, right? Where you're trying to figure out around the edges, above and beyond their explicit preferences, what they might want to see and what they might consider to acquire. And so we do a lot of work around that, but it's been at the heart of the Flippa experience for a long time.
Got it. On the note of matching, in order to better match, as far as how are you helping some of the businesses as far as, create listings, ensure like the quality of the listings, and then maybe even help them with like pricing suggestions?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things going on there. So top of funnel, we have our valuation product, and it's an intelligent valuations effort. It's backed by 5 different machine learning models. We take both Flippa's own historical data sources, as well as we do industry insight. And we then attempt, and we get better at this every month, we attempt to accurately value the asset. And that's based on the age of the asset, the financial inputs, the operational detail, things like Amazon seller ratings if it's an Amazon store versus MRR, churn, and LTV if it's a SaaS business. So everything's sort of balanced out individually. Then we have an onboarding functionality, and as it relates to the question around that experience and how you verify, we tend to use a combination of data as well as human verification. The data relates to connections. So we connect to Stripe, we connect to Shopify, we connect to QuickBooks Online, we connect to Google Analytics, we connect to AdSense. and a multitude of others. And we will continue to build out those integrations so as sellers can better list and we can better verify the quality of the asset. That verification, programmatic verification, is then matched to human level verification. And so we go through a bunch of checks with respect to the asset and the asset sizes. Once they've completed the onboarding experience, that's when the matching starts. Now, we do have an off-market too, and the matching actually begins further up funnel. And the off-market is a bunch of stuff that you can't see on Flippa today. It's the same functionality, but there are a bunch of deals which those business owners don't want exposed to a public marketplace. And they're typically higher value in nature. But the matching fundamentals are the same, the verification fundamentals are the same. On the buy side, the onboarding basically asks a bunch of clarification questions about what they're looking for. And so we're trying to qualify the buyer so as we can get a best fit match with the seller. So things like, do they have experience with a particular business model? How many assets do they currently own within that business model? What is their overall budget? What is the breakdown of that budget and how many assets they want to acquire for that total budget? Where are they based? Do they have any biases toward the types of sellers and assets they want to acquire and the location of those, and a bunch of other factors? So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, thanks for sharing that with us. So going beyond the match, like what does that kind of like transaction process look like? And then, what are some ways that, you've kind of, added value or kind of like maybe even built in value, as a marketplace for that transaction process?
Yeah, so on the sell side, we kind of invented the space, right? So we've got a whole bunch of data and information that we can use to help sellers get the deal done at the optimum price in a reasonable time period. And ultimately what we offer is unparalleled buyer reach at the best possible price. On the buy side, it's an end-to-end platform offering. So there's kind of four things. The first one is the matching and the relevant deal flow. And most buyers are interested in deal flow. The second thing is due diligence. So the verified data, which I talked about a little bit before, as well as we offer outsourced, it's a team that works in the Flippa context, but outside the Flippa marketplace. So outsourced in-depth due diligence and analysis of any given asset. The third thing we offer is lending and acquisition finance partnerships. And finally, the fourth thing we offer is integrated escrow and legal services. So what we are is the investment bank for the 99%. We are an end-to-end deal platform, and that's the way we want our buyers to think about the Flippa engagement. For sellers, they just want to get a deal done at the right price as fast as they can possibly get it done. So we're here to help with that.
Got it. Yeah, I can certainly see that. Yeah, that's really interesting. Even to learn about the kind of embedded financing too.
Yeah, the embedded financing is going to be key because more and more people are becoming cognizant and recognizing digital real estate as a genuine asset class. And so much like you can borrow money to invest in multiple other asset classes, you should just be able to do that just as easy for digital real estate. And that's what we're trying to figure out.
Yeah, certainly. So on that note too, what is like the average deal size like?
Yeah, this is shifting very, very quickly. So the average deal size for the prior calendar year, I'm speaking out of turn here. I must admit I haven't pulled that data that recently, but I imagine it's now around $75,000 across the entire marketplace. But what's really interesting is, Flippa is value agnostic. So some people say, oh, well, we're a broker, we only do deals above $1 million or whatever it might be. Great. Flippa's a marketplace. We're valuation agnostic. We're not a broker. Brokers operate on our platform, of course, and we can talk about that. as a channel part of our marketplace strategy. And so what that means is, you'll always have big deals, and we do deals up to $35 million on the platform. And you also have very small deals as low as a couple of $1,000.
Yeah, that's definitely super interesting. I did actually want to ask about the broker network, because that seems definitely quite unique also.
Yeah, so the broker network, really, really critical to our strategy. They do such a good job. They're really good at hand-holding the customer experience end to end and providing that like white glove service. And so what Flippa wants to do is provide a pathway to exit for these small business owners, right? And so we would be silly to suggest that we can do all of that for every seller using technology. You've got to understand that some sellers are better off being matched with an expert. And so we have 129 broker managed deals on the platform right now. I expect that to triple in 2022 because brokers are seeing a lot of value from the Flippa platform. Again, unparalleled reach to buyers. And so if they can be matched to great business owners that we find through our valuation register and then support those sellers with the process, they can still leverage the Flippa platform to get access to our buying network. And so ultimately what we do is we collect the seller and we pass that seller on to a relevant broker, and then the broker gets to utilize our platform. In turn, brokers also put their own deals on Flippa to get access to our buyers.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like it's a great kind of channel partner, as you mentioned. So I'd be interested to learn more about, as far as like the buyers and the sellers. I'm assuming that these are probably some of them are repeat, right?
In particular, and again, as you know, marketplaces kind of need to be broken down by buy and sell or supply and demand. So on the buy side, yes, lots of repeat behavior. So 44% of buyers repeat. On the sell side, it's far lower than that. I must admit, I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but it's probably something like 20% of sellers are repeat. And so, yeah, buyers will tend to want to build a portfolio. So, for example, there is a buyer in Toronto, and admittedly, he buys smaller sized assets. And so I think his average deal size is like $25,000, but he's bought 12 assets in the prior 6-month period, and he's up 200% on his invested dollar. So you do get buyers sort of rinse and repeating their acquisition process.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I'm sure you've probably seen the same asset being bought and resold on the marketplace continually too, right?
Yeah, so that happens as well. I mean, there's a great video on our website right now of a gentleman by the name of John Chan. He bought a business for only $7,500, an e-commerce business. 2.5 years later, he sold that on Flippa for $550,000. Pretty good return on the invested dollar there. And now he's redeployed that $550 and bought multiple assets on the platform, one of which, again, e-commerce business for plus size fashion, paid $60,000 for it, and he's about to list that for 10 times that at $600,000 2.5 years post-acquisition. So yeah, that happens a lot. I mean, you get mature, smart operators really good at optimizing an asset's performance. Either they rip the costs out where the cost shouldn't have existed in the first place, or they add smart and sophisticated advertising programs, be it Facebook, Google, or other. They get a really, really strong ROAS. They continue to invest, and then they drop that platform back on drop that asset back on the platform sometime later and get a handsome return.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like a great success story on that for sure. So I believe you shared about you recently raised a Series A round, so a big congrats on that. But could you share more about maybe what that fundraising journey was like since you guys have bootstrapped for so long, and then more on your recent growth?
Yeah, so I guess I'll take the latter first. Growth is important when you raise capital, so let's talk about that a little bit. we are up GMV wise, so gross merchandise value, which is, as you know, tends to be the metric that a lot of marketplaces talk about to represent marketplace liquidity. And so we're up 85% year on year. So that gave us the growth story to be able to have discussions. In addition, there was clearly recognition and awareness for the speed of growth across these platforms. So Amazon, WordPress, the iOS and Android store, SaaS technologies like Stripe, etc. That in their case of payment technology supporting SaaS businesses. So there was a lot of groundswell and recognition for the industry that we're operating in, and so that helps. You can grow, but the investors ultimately also need to believe that you're operating in an industry that is very big and fast growing, and that helped us too, right? So timing is a big factor here. Our recent growth has been a factor of not only the groundswell, but also our ability to deploy marketing into and build awareness for Flippa for the first time ever, because we historically hadn't spent $1 on marketing. And so we've now been able to do that. And so just for the December quarter, the marketplace value, so that's the value of the assets listed on the platform, exceeded 250 million. And so that's fantastic, right? So October, November, December, $250 million worth of asset value listing on the platform. Substantially up on prior year. Now, we're also, as a result of that, and so you're talking about a very short period of time, but as a result of that, remember, we only raised the money 3 months ago. We're now sitting on $70 million in signed LOI value just through that same quarter, which we expect to drop between this month and next month. And so if the effort of our sales and marketing team continues to play out, then we will have demonstrated that not only could we raise the money, but we can successfully deploy the money. And that's clearly a big factor in going on to raise additional rounds of capital or deciding what we do next. The decision to raise from being a bootstrap profitable startup, it's a really difficult one, right? Because first you control your destiny and then you don't necessarily. So we've had to consider that, but ultimately what we wanted to do, we're number one, we want to retain that position. We want to scale to 10 times the value of today. And so to do that, you tend to need some help.
Got it. Yeah, it's always interesting to hear the stories of, the marketplaces that are bootstrapped and then go on to raise. So, yeah. So, on the note of the team, what is your team like? And, as a marketplace, the kind of the org structure?
Yeah, very distributed, was distributed before COVID, is still distributed. So that's kind of worked in our interest. We have customers all over the world, and we've always recognized the value of having good talent all over the place. Our two biggest teams operate between Austin, Texas, and Melbourne, Australia. Austin is predominantly sales and marketing, and Melbourne is predominantly product and engineering. In addition to that, we have marketplace integrity folk distributed throughout the world. So we have staff in places like Berlin, London, Kingston, Jamaica, even Manila, as well as Bali over in Indonesia. So we deliberately distribute the team and get great talent across the globe, because ultimately we are global. Digital asset owners are all around the world. The team size today, I think we're now at 35 FTE. We'll probably be at 100 12 months from now.
That'll be quite the growth. So
yeah, it's going to be fun. Big industry from which to grow into.
Yeah, certainly. So we're going to jump in here to the group questions here in a second. But before we do, so you have some really great experience, bootstrapping and now raising with Flippa. So do you have any kind of tips for early stage marketplace founders here that might be helpful?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would say is settle on a North Star metric, and better than that, one North Star metric, and really just focus in on achieving against that. And so that could be GMV, it could be units sold, it could be number of registered buyers, so long as you can tie those registered buyers back to actual liquidity. So that would be first tip. Second tip would be to start to understand not only the size of the industry today, but where you think it's going. And so a lot of the time it will take investors some time to analyze and understand not only how well you are doing and how competent you are as a founder, but how big the industry is that you are actually going after. And in this space, digital real estate, things like NFTs, it's so hard to understand how big this might be. And so you've got to help paint that picture. So I'd focus on that as well. And then finally, a limited, very, very capable, highly talented team focusing on that North Star metric and not being derailed and not losing focus. And that would probably be my third big point.
Yeah, those are great. So you did mention the North Star metric. So I guess I have to ask, what's your kind of North Star metric?
So our North Star metric is GMV. We go after marketplace liquidity. That's the value of the assets sold between the buyers and sellers.
Got it. Yeah, and then you mentioned NFT, so I'll come back to that. I have a question about that myself. So, but cool. We're gonna jump into questions here. Hey Sam, did you want to jump on?
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Thanks, Blake, for doing this. Appreciate this, especially as a fellow Aussie. It's a nice time compared to the usual American ones. So appreciate that. So my question is, like you mentioned, that it's the marketplace is kind of a high value, low repeat sort of marketplace. I imagine one of the challenges there would be people going outside the marketplace. Is that a challenge that you've solved kind of through the tech? So people are doing the transaction kind of on the platform, and it's really hard for them to go off, or is that easy to solve? And is there another big problem with that high value, low repeat that is not that problem?
Definitely not easy to solve. My general view of it is that you want to build a product which adds value at every step of the user journey such that they don't want to circumvent. And so in our particular case, that means the end-to-end service is required. And so, of course, you want the buyers to use the asset to communicate. You want the sellers to use the platform to share confidential information about the asset's performance and provide a platform which enables them to attach documents, store documents, share documents. You want to provide buyers services like payments. And so if you have payments and you have those payment engines at a very, very low price point, in our case, we provide escrow for free, then inevitably buyers would far prefer to operate on a platform where you're getting something of value than they would elsewhere and having to pay. So you tend to think about what is the end-to-end journey that both sides of the marketplace want, and you then plot a pathway to delivering the most important things through that experience, and that should therefore avoid the motivation to circumvent. Now, all marketplaces have a problem with circumvention, and I won't suggest we don't either. We do. Some people circumvent, they never pay us, and that's bad. But inevitably, they get found out. And so what ends up happening is if you've got a good marketplace full of deal flow, it becomes pretty difficult for them if they want to ever go and do a deal again. And so we're quite aggressive in our policing of the marketplace. And so in short, combination of tech plus the human layer is probably the answer.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. That's a great question. So Davey actually had a question. He can't come on. It's late there in Europe, but he posted. It was on a similar kind of thread as far as low frequency, high AOV, and are there any kind of unique challenges when it comes to that as a marketplace for marketing and paid acquisition? And maybe what's your kind of approach with that?
Yeah, I think there is some unique challenges, and actually, Mike, you had a guest who did a really good job of articulating the challenges within a high value, low repeat marketplace. I can't remember his name, but I would encourage people to watch his presentation.
Oh, Vivek. He taught that at Reforge. It's incredible. So
that was really good. So have a look at that. I mean, What we do is we use the Flippa valuation product as a means to engage with the customer. So helpful for them, they want to know how much their asset is worth. Helpful for us because we get a sense of what their asset looks like. And that gives you some sense of the value of the customer you might be dealing with. And so what you can then do is orientate your paid marketing to attract similar or like people. And so you need an engine which enables you to identify the value of your users, so as you can coach that engine to get more of those same people. And so what we do is we think about obviously the cost of attracting people to top of funnel. And then we look at what percentage of those people go on to list and what percentage of those people go on to sell, and then the value of that at a GMV level. We then take into consideration our take rate for that individual. And then finally, we can calculate CAC, cost of acquisition. And then we just continue to refine that engine, kind of no different to the way e-commerce works, frankly.
Got it. Yeah. And then on a note of commission, is that, do you have like a standard commission across, the board as a marketplace, or does that vary?
It's variable, but over $100,000, it's 5% success fee.
Got it. Yeah. And then, so I actually had a note here, and you mentioned it earlier about NFTs, which that's all, the rage right now and whatnot. So, what is your kind of, I would say, like, take as far as, just digital assets, beyond maybe businesses and into, whether it's digital collectibles, NFTs or whatnot?
Yeah, I would never suggest that I'm an expert, other than to say I think it's a super exciting industry, and I think we're nowhere near the beginning. Certainly there are multiple applications for NFTs, and we all know the stories of the Bored Ape Yacht Club. We all know the stories of artwork, digitized artwork being sold in an NFT context. So that's all good and well, and that will continue to thrive, no doubt. The question is, what real world use cases can become really prevalent and prominent, and is there marketplace environments which will enable those to happen and flourish? And certainly, I think real estate, I'm talking traditional real estate, is a very, very sound use case. Groups, communities, and the ability to access those exclusively, I think NFTs can be really, really helpful for. And yeah, I certainly think that our space, so digital real estate, websites, and digital assets that are, I guess, they're digital, but they're more tangible in nature, they would be good use cases for the application of NFT. I'll leave it at that because I probably will go beyond my capability in that regard.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, I was also curious to know if that's something that maybe you would look into as a category on Flippa.
We're really interested in it. We're trying to school ourselves up right now, and we're speaking to. The good thing about Flippa is we have 3 million. It's far in excess of this now, but we have 3 million users, and this group is incredibly savvy. They're smart. They're smart operators across multiple different subject matter expertise, different business models, different asset types. And so we can use that community. We do that quite regularly. We call on our community to inform us a lot. And we're doing that right now as it relates to NFTs.
Interesting. Yeah. So do you guys have as far as community, do you have like a platform or whether that's like Facebook group or like a Circle community or Slack group or what does that kind of?
Yeah, unfortunately not, Mike, but we should. What we have right now are just direct relationships between members of our sales team, marketing team, the exec, the founders, and then particular individuals who we go to for this insight. We obviously pull together surveys quite regularly and use that for feature development, user testing, etc. But I must admit, at the moment, it's mostly manual. It's, hey, we know you guys do this. Can you please have a chat to us about it? And they tend to say yes.
That always works, right? That's tried and true. So I think we have a question right here. Let me see. I think he just posted it here for me to ask. But yeah. So he was asking as far as initially You did mention like that. I believe it was, a couple hundred users. I don't know if it was like a day or kind of per week. But earlier on, like, how did you kind of like initially like start that flywheel with user growth in a more organic fashion?
Yeah, so different organizations will use different means, right? So some are very PR orientated, some are very paid marketing orientated. For Flippa, and probably for some other long tail marketplaces, which I would consider us, SEO has been a very, very, very big part of our program. I'm just going to plug in my computer before everything dies while I answer the question. My apologies.
You're good.
But the big thing for us has been SEO. And so what we do is, as a result of all of the assets listing on the platform, as well as getting valued, and I'm talking about 3,000 to 5,000 assets a month, that to Google is a gold mine, right? Because people are saying, I am an e-commerce business for sale. I am in the fashion industry. I am based in this location. And then the next group comes on and says the same about SaaS and the same about FBA. And so we have this incredible frequency of rich content that is user generated coming through our platform and marketplace. And that's been good to us from an acquisition standpoint. And so I would think about how you can use, in any marketplace context, the listing pages themselves as a means to win keyword coverage.
Cool. So I think, unless anyone else has any questions, do we have any more group Q&A?
With the current landscape of all the different marketplaces in the same industry, like all the competitors, what are you focusing on? Like, obviously you're a well-established marketplace. What's the kind of key focus? I know like MicroAcquire is trying to grow into the larger scale of acquisitions. And then there's some marketplaces that like Tiny Acquisitions focuses on like sub 10K. Is there like a kind of a North Star in the sense of which section you're trying to go after? Or is it more of a general, we're trying to be available for anyone who wants to list at any range?
Yeah, certainly as it relates to the actual value of the asset, we're value agnostic. So our vision is really broad and big in the sense that, again, we want to enable the exit for any small business owner. We think that's a really admirable play, and we think it's a big play, and we think it adds value to the end user by saying that the platform has worked hard enough to build the end-to-end feature set which you need regardless of size to get a deal done. So as it relates to where we focus, I mean, certainly, I guess like anyone, we're interested in acquiring as many sellers as we can to match up to our buyers. And so we think about that from both the marketing and sales standpoint. At a product level, it's very, very much about matching and data. The data is related to who the buyer is and what they want, and on the sell side, who the seller is and what they have to sell. And if we can understand intricately and in detail those two things, then the matching starts to get more and easier and better each time. And so sales and marketing tend to be focused on sellers. Product and engineering tends to be focused on matching.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense especially if you're onboarding more brokers as well, that might naturally rise as well, like brokers doing higher size deals as well.
Yeah. I mean, sellers want to go where buyers are, right? And in our case, don't care what anyone says, the data suggests we have unparalleled reach. We have buyers aren't loyal, I'll agree with that. They'll go wherever the deals are, but we have more of all of them.
Awesome. And one last question, sorry to jump in with so many questions. The hiring that you're planning to do, is that going to be focused on sales and marketing? Is it going to be focused on the tech spread across Australia and the States?
Yeah, so we added, I think it was 12 headcount in Austin in that last quarter of 2021, all orientated towards sales and onboarding. So that's been a big focus. We also added 4 product management individuals to the team here in Melbourne in December alone. And so that gives you some sense of what we're going to try to do at the product and engineering level, we think we can 10 times our output. So we're about to add another 7 engineering heads to match to that 4 product management headcount. They'll obviously have more to do for that group. So it's an interesting one, right? Talent acquisition strategy. You've kind of got to think about who comes when and how they fit with what they can achieve and what you're trying to achieve at any given point in time. It's a bit like a jigsaw puzzle. So we added sales, then we added some product, now we'll add some engineers.
Beautiful, thank you. Yeah, I've got a small e-com side project and I'm actually doing the listing now. So I'm going to list it in the next couple of days. So I'll
cool. Let me know if you need any help. Just drop me a note at blake@flippa.com and I'll help you think through it if you need any help.
Appreciate that. Thanks so much.
Awesome. That's definitely cool to see. So this is a really great chat, Blake. So I appreciate taking time to join us. And it was super, interesting to learn more about Flippa as a marketplace. Before you wrap it up, though, I did have a question. I'm sure you've seen lots of awesome kind of stories and businesses, of course, that are sold on Flippa. But is there one that kind of like stands out as like this is a really cool story?
Yeah, there's so many. The one that I still like, and I must admit, I rinse and repeat when I ever get the question, but I love the story of the crochet blog. So 20-year-old blog, orientated to crochet, retiree, was doing around $30,000 annual revenue all through AdSense, and sold it for $90,000 on Flippa about 48 hours post-listing. Was in tears as a result because clearly, 65 years old, you've been running something for 20 years, it's a side hustle, you're retiring, suddenly you end up with $90,000 additional in your back pocket for a business that you invested very little upfront cash into in the first place, means a pretty happy customer. And so I love the stories of human passions that bear fruit on Flippa.
Yeah, that's definitely a really great story. So keeps you motivated, to keep building as a founder too, keep pushing through things. So awesome. Well, yeah, this is a really great. So I appreciate taking the time to join us here today. Last but not least, before we wrap things up, time for a quick plug. Where can we keep up with you at?
Yeah, so look, if anyone wants any help or insight into valuation or how the platform works, obviously check out the site, flippa.com, but you can also, I'm happy for people to contact me directly if they'd like. So that's Blake, BLAKE, @flippa.com. Otherwise, get me at Blake Now on Twitter, and you can find me on LinkedIn too, Blake Hutchison. I'm happy to connect with anyone or everyone and have a chat about either marketplaces or Flippa as a whole.
Awesome. I really appreciate it. And I'll include I'll include that in the details of this, because I know we had a lot that RSVP'd in Australia that weren't able to join those. So I know they'll love watching the recording. So, and thanks again for this. And thanks everyone for joining in the questions today. So
awesome, Mike. Thank you. And congratulations on building an awesome community too.
I appreciate it. Well, yeah, you're a big reason why it's great. So thanks for joining us here today. So
thanks very much. Take care.
See you, everyone.